Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's Election Economic Development Roundtable presented by the Chamber of Commerce for Greater Moncton and 3Plus Economic Development Corporation. My name is John Wishart. I'm the CEO of the Chamber, and I'm joined today by my colleague at 3Plus, the CEO, Susie Campos. So this is the last of three roundtables that our two organizations will present to provide a platform for important election issues for both the business community and candidates running in the September 14th provincial election. Today's roundtable centers on economic recovery, the state of key sectors in our economy, opportunities for growth, and what our region needs in terms of support to rebound from COVID-19. Now, we're very lucky today to have four great speakers with us to help frame this discussion. With us today are Bill Hennessy, the Managing Director of Colliers International New Brunswick and Platinum Atlantic Realty, Alicia Roisman-Ijmak, entrepreneur in residence at Venn Innovation, Bernard Leblanc, the CEO of the Greater Moncton Romeo Leblanc International Airport, and Jean-Marc Picard, Executive Director of the Atlantic Provinces Trucking Association. So welcome Bill, Alicia, Bernard, and Jean-Marc. Bonjour à tous, bienvenue au webinaire Zoom de ce matin présenté par la Chambre de commerce pour le Grand Moncton et Corporation 3Plus. Aujourd'hui, il me fait plaisir de souhaiter la bienvenue Bill Hennessy, Alicia Ijmak, Bernard Leblanc, et Jean-Marc Picard. As everyone on this call knows, we're in the final week of a short election campaign, and the Chamber and 3Plus believe it is important to present to the business community some of the issues that may help guide our region to a more prosperous future. This is how today's roundtable will go. Bill will lead us off with a short discussion on the retail, commercial, and hospitality sectors. He'll be followed by Alicia, who will discuss opportunities in fintech. Then Bernard and Jean-Marc will close with presentations on the challenges facing the transportation sector. At any time during the presentations, you can pose questions via the chat button at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Just type your question there and we will pose as many as possible as time allows at the end of the presentations. Also, please note that we've muted everyone's microphone except for our guest speakers. So with that, I will turn the podium over to our first guest speaker, Bill Hennessy, to lead us off. Bill?
Thank you very much, John. Well, good morning, everybody. And first off, I'd like to thank both 3Plus and the Greater Moncton Chamber of Commerce for organizing this worthwhile event. Economic recovery is key for all of us involved. My name is Bill Hennessy, and I've been involved in the Greater Moncton business community now for the last 25 plus years. I have a number of responsibilities that I currently do on a regular basis. I'm a managing director of Colliers, as John had said, in New Brunswick. Colliers New Brunswick is the largest commercial real estate brokerage business in New Brunswick. And just for clarity, our Colliers NB company is independently owned, and we operate on a franchise type arrangement with Colliers nationally. We've had some news recently. We expanded in January 2020 to add PEI to our reach, and in May, in the middle of the pandemic, we opened an office in St. John's, Newfoundland. So I know Bernard's on the call, so big thanks to Bernard Leblanc with the Moncton Airport for working with Provincial Airlines and getting a direct flight from Moncton to St. John's starting September 21st. Sorry, Bernard, if I'm stealing any of your thunder. As the CEO of Platinum Atlantic, Platinum is a residential real estate company. Anybody that reads the transcript or watches any local news knows that this sector is currently on fire. The Greater Moncton Real Estate Association just released its August numbers. Home sales were up 54% over August of 2019, which was a good year last year. And what I find even more interesting is the average home sale broke the $200,000 mark, which we have never seen in our history. However, by comparison, the average Toronto sale price for August of 2020 was $951,000. So if you want to follow a theme, you want to pocket $750 million, work remotely, and move to Moncton. I'm also the president of 5-5 Developments. As many of you already know, we completed a 8-story multi-use property in the heart of downtown. 5-5 houses a Gahan restaurant, Experience NB wine, boutique wine store, 41 condominiums, 14 rental condos, and a 97-room Canvas Hotel by Hilton, which I will speak about when I talk about hospitality. In executing the roles, I've had a front row seat to the impact of COVID on the economy of Southeast New Brunswick. John and Susie asked me to speak on the impacts on commercial real estate and hospitality. I have a view to national because of the number of boards I'm on, and I'll also speak to the trends nationally as well as locally. Let me kick off with commercial real estate. If we look at commercial real estate, the bulk of the capital is either office, industrial, or retail. Starting with office, the conflicting debate of every office, and I'm sure the chamber and the like are no different, the debate is if we bring everybody back to work and do social distancing, we need more space. If everybody chooses to work remotely, we certainly need less space. So what are we going to do with our leases? A recent Colliers National Work from Home survey concluded that most people are innately social, and the office facilitates both planned and spontaneous interaction that's difficult to emulate remotely. Employees are looking to adopt a hybrid work arrangement wherein they get to work from home and work in the office. Most national offices have at this point allowed their employees to choose to work remotely if they prefer. The dust is settling. We've looked at Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, and Vancouver, and the numbers coming in at about 40% that have returned to the office for at least a part of the week. Ironically, due to the fact that we live in, despite the fact, I guess, that we live in the most COVID-safe part of North America, here in Southeast New Brunswick, we've had less employees coming back to the office environment. I've spoken with many property managers for some of the largest office buildings in downtown, and a return percentage is as low as 15 to 20. That unfortunately puts a burden on the services that are in place to support these workers. Think of the coffee shops, think of the lunch places, think of the dry cleaners who are showing significant, as an 80+% reduction in revenue. So my first recommendation, if I could, to 3Plus or the Chamber, even downtown Moncton Centre-Ville, is to promote people returning to their offices for at least a part of the work week. By way of example, at our Colliers office, I made returning optional. We have all COVID protocols in place. We clean common areas. We do social distancing. We move desks around. All have chosen to come back to work. We've got a hybrid arrangement. We do our weekly team meetings, not in the boardrooms, but on Microsoft Teams with people logging in from the desk at their offices. Feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. Moving on to industrial, when we think of the industrial space, it's best described as what you would normally see when you drive through the industrial parks. Nationally, the industrial space, despite COVID, is healthy and growing. It is being primarily driven by the growth in e-commerce, think online shopping, and all the supporting logistics. With 6 industrial parks here in Greater Moncton, the asset class is a strong contributor to our economy. At our Colliers office, any industrial property we bring to market, we have offers and likely have sold within a week. And we currently have more industrial tenants looking for space than we actually have space. So as indicated, it's a very strong market. By luck of geography, we've got the largest catchment area in Atlantic Canada with 1.4 million within a 2.5 hour drive. So you just think of the advantage we can bring to these e-commerce companies that are looking for efficient home delivery. We need to target and market to these e-commerce companies. We are a long way from Amazon sending a drone from Toronto to drop a package on a deck in Bugtouche. This growth in e-commerce is happening now. This need for warehousing regionally is happening now. And as a region, I would recommend we get on our toes and go after this business now. Moving to retail, when I hear any talk of retail, I'm reminded of Mark Twain's quote, "Reports of my death are greatly exaggerated." After month over month of steady increases in Canadian retail sales, the sector took a hit in April and May 2020. However, with 53 billion retail sales in June 2020, it was the highest month since 2015. There's no doubt been some challenges to the retail sector. However, all news is not bad. Supermarkets like Sobeys Superstore, home improvements like Home Depot and Home Hardware, and Costco are all up significantly. One local home improvement chain was telling me that May 2020 year-to-date revenues were higher than all of 2019. With consumption going up, how we fundamentally do retail is evolving. What I see, if I could dare use the word winners going forward, are those companies that have a well-developed online presence and local bricks and mortar. Think of the Apple Store, Best Buy, Costco. Greater Moncton, because of our catchment area, is a shopping tourism destination. Because of this, we should target the Apples and Teslas of the world to open their first Atlantic Canadian retail store here in Moncton. The last sector I'll speak of is hospitality, and there's no doubt hospitality has been slammed due to COVID. Restaurants were initially forced to close, then being true entrepreneurs, they adapted their offerings to such things as curbside pickup, at-home delivery, and weekly box offerings. Current situation with the majority of restaurants is they are scrambling to make revenue however they can in an effort to just break even. They're relying on the wage subsidy to keep them afloat while they're waiting for a COVID vaccination, and hopefully people will return to their dining rooms. It's unfortunate the Canadian Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program has not offered much help to restaurants. At best, it is described as poorly designed. In fact, less than 1/3 of the landlords in New Brunswick has even bought it. The other part of hospitality is the hotel industry, and on March the 17th, the hotel industry effectively stopped here locally. Within weeks, 8 hotels in Greater Moncton had closed. Gerard Normando, the GM of the Crown Plaza and president of Southeast New Brunswick Hotel Association, reported that COVID is costing the local hotel industry $5 to $6 million a month. In our particular case at Canvas Hotel, we chose to stay open. Our hope is investing in our new team, kind of like going to war together, if you would best position Canvas for when the market does return. For everyone's understanding and background, the vast majority of hotels in Canada are owned by small and medium-sized businesses. Locally, Canvas Moncton is owned by 3 entrepreneurs. The new Hyatt and the new Hilton Garden Inn under construction are all owned by local businesses. Through a franchise-type arrangement, we fly the flags of the international brands. However, we are not a New York-based Fortune 500 company, rather local businesses. And I remind everyone of this, as when we choose to buy local from locally owned hotels. At hotels, we make revenue from casual tours, from business travelers and events like weddings and conferences. At Canvas, the first reservations started to return after the slowdown from COVID was a New Brunswick-based casual traveler. A big thank you to the province of New Brunswick for the 20% staycation incentive. Within a couple of days, our phone started to ring and online inquiries spiked up. Following July 3rd, Atlantic Bubble opening, our business travelers started primarily with Nova Scotia business travelers. In February 2020, we had a whole summer booked with 22 events, primarily weddings and conferences, and all were subsequently canceled. Our best guess is that we are at least 1 to 2 years from seeing any event business coming back. In fact, we'll be the last part of the hospitality sector to return. Looking ahead, we're looking forward to the Atlantic Bubble becoming the Canadian Bubble. Any help in that area from anybody on the call would certainly be appreciated. This past Monday's transcript editorial came out in favor of the Canadian Bubble. In the interim, we as a hospitality industry would like to see the wage subsidy for our industry extended until we get that events business back. Kind of general comment looking out over the horizon, I do see opportunity. Despite the pandemic, we do have opportunities for our region. Yes, we've all heard the stories, but I can tell you they're true. We have sold houses at full asking price using Facebook Live to people from Toronto. We need more migration into Greater Moncton, aggressively target the rest of Canada. By way of example, in August at 5-5, we sold a beautiful condo. The whole transaction took less than a month and the buyers never did physically visit 5-5 until they owned it. This couple from Montreal sold their house in Montreal, bought in Moncton, took the difference and made a big contribution to the retirement fund. And most interestingly, both have the exact same job they had when they were in Montreal. They are working remotely with same salary and benefits. This would not have happened 6 months ago. Anybody that reads the Globe probably saw a quote or saw an article yesterday with the title, "Cheap Housing Meets Quality of Life. When are you moving to Moncton?" Out of that, I see tremendous opportunity. Another example, of course, we've probably all heard of is Jessom Tool Company. Jessom is an Orillia, Ontario-based tool manufacturer that's moving to Moncton and building an 85,000 square foot plant. It's hiring 55 people and 10 people transferring from Ontario. When asked why, here's Jessom's quote. "We checked out options in Ontario, but the economics of switching manufacturing to New Brunswick was a major attraction." Jessom has already leased 12,000 square feet of industrial from a local landlord. They've hired a local general contractor, Nuco Construction, to build the plant. They've engaged a local real estate agent to find them 10 homes. This is in the middle of a pandemic. This is a great economic development story with fantastic economic spin-offs. In my mind, let's go get more. Why not take out a one page in the Globe to sell Greater Moncton, tell the Jessamine story, get one point of contact, OMB, 3+, doesn't matter, just make it easy for people, provide streamlined service. Engage local landlords and people in commercial real estate on the pitch team. With our COVID-safe areas and new abilities to work remote, we have a good story to tell. Let's tell our story, let's be bold, and as Warren Buffett would say, let's go against the crowd. So to summarize, I would kind of leave you with this. In Greater Moncton, we need to get people to return their offices. It's key to their offices. It's key for our revitalization. We need to target e-commerce companies and market the fact that we are the best solution for an Atlantic Canadian industrial presence. We need to target experience-based retailers with both online and bricks and mortar presence, such as the Apple Store and Tesla, to establish their first Atlantic retail store in Greater Moncton. Expand the Atlantic bubble to the Canadian bubble. Leave the wage subsidy in place for the hospitality sector until we get a COVID vaccine and events return. And in closing, be bold. Market the benefits of Greater Moncton to Central Canada-based remote workers. You get the cash out and still keep your job. And shout the Jessamine story to all that will hear it. Use it to attract more businesses. So to summarize in short, we have to go against the crowd. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bill. That's a great summary, and there certainly are some green shoots of opportunity coming out of COVID. And you mentioned both the residential housing market and the multi-res, which is on fire as well. So perhaps that speaks to some of the resiliency of the local economy heading into COVID, that we're still seeing opportunities there. And to your point about downtown and office workers, I'd like to share that the Chamber, 3+, and Downtown Moncton Centreville are joining forces to hold a series of one-on-one meetings with the 20 largest office tenants in downtown to understand their plans for remote work versus back in the workplace, and to encourage a return to the city center. So that is on the radar for sure.
That's appreciated.
So next up is Alicia from Venn Innovation, and one of the areas of Alicia's expertise is in the fintech sector. So Alicia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me today. I'm really excited. I have been a proud resident of Greater Moncton for the last 2.5 years. I arrived here after living most of my professional life in one of the top high-tech centers in the world. Many call it a startup nation or Israel, where I led the development and distribution of financial technologies worldwide. What is financial technology? Just I want to clarify what I'm talking about first. Financial technologies, or fintech, as we like to call it in short, are the technologies that digitalize the financial industry end to end, from the back-end system to the front-end interface, for any new service or more efficient process or new business model they want to support. The technologies that I'm talking about are the ones that fuel the growth and also the competitiveness of financial service providers that we all know, like banks, insurance companies, wealth management firms, and also disruptors, new services that these companies bring to the market. Now, this is one of the fastest growing sectors in the world and attracts to the tens of billions of dollars in investments, and it's growing, it's not stopped there. Luckily, our region enjoys already of a significant number of fintech companies. Most of them are not recognized as such and also under the radar, but these companies are here and they already are influencing or controlling billions of dollars in client transactions from their local office here or even from home as necessary. Just to give you an example that they will recognize, we have a lot of financial technology developed within companies like TKS, Assumption Life, MediaV, Blue Cross, but we also have companies, fintech companies that have been founded and are younger but strong, like SnapAP or Credit Card Genius, that are growing very successfully. We have companies that have also strong fintech component or layer within their platforms that also are not commonly recognized in this sector, but are here as well, like Property Guys that have a significant technology platform, and IGT that fuel large volumes of transactions. What is important, in my opinion, to notice is that fintech companies are not dependent on local purchase or the power of the local economy even. They can service and are servicing clients anywhere, in Canada and in the world, and they don't physically deliver any goods. So most of these companies are growing even in times of crisis, and their solutions, and many times, are even more required because of crisis. For example, I am part of the technology committee of the Electronic Transaction Associations in the US. And after working with fintech companies here in our region, I know that the technologies that we have here are at pair with leading solutions around the world. Our companies are already partnering with global corporations, and they are bringing clients from many different places in the world. We have people working on these solutions, but also we have the ability to develop more talent for it from our universities. And it doesn't stop there. It's just the beginning. And because it's a very hot sector globally, it's a good opportunity for us to have these companies more strongly recognized. They have the potential to turn the region, our region, in a real global fintech hub. As it was said before, for many companies around the world that they are looking for new technologies or opening subsidiaries for development and operations, our region is more attractive when they know that they have other fintech companies around them. No one wants to open a company or launch a new company or a subsidiary in a region that will be hard to recognize other companies around that have similarities in terms of a type of talent they need to hire, or how they work from that location globally. So knowing that we have these companies, and they are not just a few, but a significant number, help also companies around the world see our region as a very attractive place for their own fintech activities. Also, one more thing I see as a similarity from where I came from and my startup companies in fintech were, in Israel, no one sells locally. The technologies there are very strong because they are targeting global markets. It's very similar here. The entrepreneurs in fintech, or the companies that are being created here, are not targeting the local market, are not targeting the local regulation. They are going around the world and targeting the large markets. So they have a high potential. These young companies are already gaining a lot of interest from leading corporations and investors from around the world. And this is, as I said already, only the beginning. The recognition of our fintech companies as a sector as more than just a few that are around with no relationship, so they can also connect to this each to the other, also in talent side and opportunities, will really strongly impact our region and brings enormous value. And they will have also access more opportunities if the sector is recognized, because with the recognition comes the connectivity and the accessibility to other global networks that are similar. In this sense, after leading the mission to Money 2020 last October of fintech companies from here, and seeing firsthand how global corporations interacted with them, I know that we have the opportunity and the potential to turn this in a real fintech global hub. I will be more than happy to answer any questions later and try to help in my best effort this potential into a reality into the coming years for our region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alicia. And I think we'd all agree that fintech is one of those sectors that holds great promise for the region. Some people might be surprised at the extent of that sector already, and there's definitely potential. Some questions are starting to flow in, and I'd encourage people to use the chat function if they could to continue with that. Next up is Bernard LeBlanc, and as I'm sure everyone on the call is aware, air travel and airports have been among the hardest hit by the pandemic. They face a challenge in rebuilding their business. And so let's hear from Bernard on the situation here at the Greater Moncton Romeo LeBlanc International Airport and what the future holds for us. Bernie?
Good. Thank you very much, John. Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning, everyone. As John said, I think a lot of you may already be aware of what the impacts are at the airport. What I'll do, I'll go over a bit of what the impacts are, what the challenges have been, and maybe the 5 things or so that we could do to help with recovery that way. Maybe I'll open the door by just asking a question: how many of you have taken a flight in the last 4 months? And I'll watch all the chat as all the numbers light up. But I think with 42 people I see online, I took one last week. I may be one of the few that did. So as everyone's aware, the aviation sector, airlines, airports, as well as the hospitality sector are probably the ones that have been hit the most by the pandemic. So what does it mean for us? So at our airport, it means that, for instance, in the month of April, which we're a bit unique, March and April are typically our strongest months of the year because all the sun destination travel we have. We would normally have 70,000 passengers. We had 1,500. So you can imagine it's a 98% drop in traffic. So we saw similar impacts in May and June. We're waiting for our August numbers right now, but in July, we're only at just short of 10% of what the traffic was last year. So since our airport revenue is really based on the passenger activity, then no activity means little or no revenue. So that's been our biggest challenge. When I look at our revenue in July, it's only about 50% of what it was last year. And again, a lot of that is because we don't have parking, we don't get revenue from airport improvement fees or car rentals because that activity just isn't taking place with no one traveling. So since COVID, the majority of our revenue, and that's where we're in maybe a bit slightly better position than some of our neighboring airports, has come from our cargo activity. So our cargo activity has been a big part of our revenue. Most of it is domestic, but we have had shipments to Asia of live lobster, and that's contributed as well. So we do get revenue from land leases. That's been steady, but about a quarter of the revenue we have coming in is from the federal wage subsidy program. So as we see that disappearing in December, our sources of revenue won't improve until we get more passenger activity. So without the passengers, our revenue sources are really challenged. So in our case, what happens going forward is we really have to brace ourselves for the recovery period. If you look at the consensus across airports in Canada and the US, and actually have board calls with the Canadian airports and North American ones in the next 2 days, the consensus is kind of to get back to the 2019 level of passenger activity, maybe in 2024, if ever. So again, a lot of things can change. Some of the services or activity we had last year may never come back. Airlines may be in difficulty. We may have to regain service we had before. So from our perspective as an airport, it's really survival mode. So our current expenditure level or pre-COVID can't match our revenue we have coming in. So we have to become sustainable. So we had to really adjust our cost base because of a 3-4 year recovery, and we need to adjust our cost structure accordingly. So as most airports, we took immediate action to reduce costs where we could. The challenge with an airport is about 70 or 80% of your costs are fixed. So whether you have one plane landing or you have 24-hour activity, it doesn't change much of what you have to do. We still have to plow the runways. We still have mow the grass. We still need firefighters available. We need to repair the runways and taxiways. So again, even if we have 90% less activity, it doesn't change our operation needs that much. So what have we done? It's very similar to other airports, is we reduced our workforce by 26%, so about a quarter of our workforce. And that's full-time employees and seasonal employees we hire for winter operations. We also reduced our expense budget by $1.5 million. So some of the things that you would normally do because you're getting to end of life or those type of things, you postpone, defer. Our capital spending this year is 8 to 10 million less than we had planned. And again, we deferred or canceled as much as possible. The challenge with delaying or postponing is that it doesn't go away. You still have to spend the money. It's just a matter of time when you do it. And if you defer, for instance, a runway refurbishment, you may still need to put money into it to keep it alive and operating. And then when it's time to fix it, you may have put more money into it because it's deteriorating some more. So our focus has been on really what's essential. So what's a regulatory requirement, what's a compliance requirement, or from the environmental perspective. So when we look at an airport like our own, what do we need for recovery? So, you know, in our case, we need passengers traveling. So that's really the end result, is unless people can travel, it's very hard to recover. So given the anticipated time of recovery, you know, what kind of assistance or support could we get? So we were fortunate when we entered the pandemic that we had a lot of cash reserves. We had money in the bank because we had major capital projects planned for 2020. So what we were able to do is stop all the projects except for the essential or, you know, safety-oriented projects or regulatory requirement type projects. So we, you know, when we look at our recovery forecast based on what we think the activity will take place, you know, we think that the cash we have in the bank will carry us till the end of the first quarter next year. We also took some measures to protect ourselves. So we expanded our line of credit, because what will happen is next year, we'll probably even have less activity than this year because we don't get the benefit of a strong first quarter like we had. So we will have to essentially borrow to pay for our operations. So by the end of next year, we'll have cut into our line of credit just to pay for the operations and keep the airport going. So when we, so again, it's a good position to be in, but it's kind of like your personal finances. It's nice to be able to borrow, but sometimes you have to pay it back. So that's where we want to be very careful, is can we pay it back? So our aim is to preserve as much cash as possible so we can delay any major investments to try and get us a bit deeper into the recovery before we make major investments. So we're really focused again on just things that are essential from safety, security, compliance, or environmental perspective. So in terms of what we need for recovery, I'll just list 5 things. But you know, the first one is really allowing people to travel, and we don't expect that travel will happen internationally or to the U.S. for quite a while, because those areas are either in second waves or recovering. But it'd be nice if people could be allowed to travel within Canada. And the challenge with not doing that is we could suffer very severe long-term impacts at airports in Greater Moncton or in Atlantic Canada. And I'll use 2 examples. Porter Airlines announced yesterday that they're not coming back in October. It might be mid-November at the earliest. But what could happen is they could say, we're not coming back until spring next year, or we're not coming back ever to all the airports. So that's a bit of a challenge. WestJet just announced yesterday that come October, instead of having 5 flights a week, we will have 4 flights a week. So we're going backwards. So again, since very few people can travel, it's hard for the airlines to put capacity or put seats or to get bookings for the seats. So that's a big challenge for us. If the airlines don't see the light, we might actually lose service instead of gain service. So it's nice that we're announcing that Provincial Airlines PAL will start a new service in 2 weeks. But if people don't use it, again, that disappears. And you know, the airlines are really putting their best foot forward to try and make people comfortable in flying, as are the airports. But without getting that confidence back, no one will fly as well. So that's our big number 1 issue. If I look at our particular airport, the federal government eliminated rent for airports that are on federal land, like our own. For us, that was over $500,000 a year we'd have to pay. But that rent is based on revenue. So if we don't have any revenue, we don't pay any rent. So when we look at what we would have to pay for $1,000, but once we recover to the level of activity, it's $500,000. So what we would like to see is that rent eliminated, because when we get back to normal, that $500,000 can be used to be reinvested in the infrastructure, which we're delaying the repairs. So that could really help us that way. The other side is that right now, the federal government really hasn't done anything that's sector specific for airlines or airports. So our big need in our particular situation will be with critical infrastructure. So if they can put programs in place or expand existing programs such that we could reinvest in resurfacing our runway, for instance. Like right now, one of our runways, we may have spent $8 million next year just to resurface it. So it doesn't add any value, it just keeps it safe and operational. Well, if we can't afford to do that, we may have spent $1 million just to patch it till the following year. And those tends to be sunk costs or lost costs if we do that. So if we can get the federal government to put programs that help us with this, or to delay or defer some regulatory requirements. So we have a regulatory requirement by essentially by the end of 2023, we will have to have runway and safety areas. That will cost us $4 million. So if they can fund a majority of these type of safety security projects, that would really help us so we can preserve our cash for operations. When I look at the fourth item, and this may be a bit touchy to some of the people I see online listening to us, but municipalities in the province haven't been hit as hard by COVID as some industries have. So in our particular case, at an airport and as our tenants, we are paying over $1 million in property taxes a year when we have very limited activity or revenue coming in. And there hasn't been any concession on that part. So if that's something that could be deferred, reduced, it would make a huge difference. And our airport, again, is a bit unique there, because if I look at our three neighboring airports, Fredericton, St. John, and Charlottetown, their annual property taxes are $200,000 or less. So at $1 million, that's really a huge cost for us when we don't have the money coming in to pay those bills. So the property tax is a big concern for us. The fifth item, and that's where I guess we all have our fingers crossed, is a vaccine. So if there's a vaccine, people feel more comfortable traveling, travel restrictions are lifted, then we can see more activity. And for us, really our revenue is based on the activity. So if we have, we've got a good contingent of cargo activity right now, and that's great, but we need the passenger activity to be able to support all the infrastructure we have going on. So just to maybe to remind everyone, but our role as an airport is really generating economic activity in the region. There's a lot of groups, whether it be 3+ or the Chamber, that really focus on that. But by having an airport, it really helps this happen as well. So we've done an economic impact study in 2015, and based on the activity at the airport, we create about 2,800 jobs in the region and generated $665 million a year of economic activity. So this year, 2020, we were set to break that record. We were set to do even better, but now we've retrenched and need a 4 or 5 year recovery on that. So I think, from our perspective, we like to be self-sufficient, but what we see in terms of recovery, it'd be nice if we could get the different levels of government to help us, whether it's help us support the reinvestment in infrastructure, have programs available, reduce taxes, those types of things, because that'll really help us recover faster. And our challenge will be to bring back the whole level of activity we had pre-COVID. So an announcement like PAL Airlines that they're starting a new service is a good first step. But if 60 or 70% of our passenger activity is Air Canada, we need to ramp back up to where they were. So having one Air Canada flight a day when we would normally have 10 is a big deterrent to us getting there. So that's a bit of our situation, John.
Thanks very much, Bernard. Yeah, lots of challenges. Thank goodness the PAL Airlines announcement came through as a little ray of sunshine. So last but not least among our speakers is Jean-Marc Picard from the Atlantic Provinces Trucking Association. And trucking and transportation, as we know, is such a huge, important sector in Greater Moncton's economy. And we know the trucks kept rolling during the pandemic, Jean-Marc, but I'm sure there are challenges and maybe some opportunities in the future. So over to you.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me today. I've been with the association for 11 years now, but in transportation for 30 years. So but I've never seen or experienced a year like we had since March. But before I get started on trucking, I just want to build on what Bill mentioned. I'm on the board of MID as well, and for the past 4 months, they've
I think Jean-Marc is frozen, folks, so stand by.
that better.
Go ahead, Jean-Marc.
We back?
Yes.
Where did I cut off?
MID.
So we just found out this morning that for the last 4 months, they've exceeded their total sales from 2019 just in those 4 months. So it's just an indication of how Moncton is faring throughout COVID. So we'll surpass the record year by a few $1 million in land sales this year. So great to see. And building on that, trucking has obviously been an important industry for New Brunswick, for the past 50 years. But this year has obviously been, highlighted a bit more in the forefront of everything with COVID. And everybody is really going flat out since March, but on the flip side of that, nobody really wants to invest in new equipment or new trucks because we're unsure of what this is going to look like in a year from now. And I take, Dane Ross, who built a multi-million-dollar facility in Caledonia with 100 dock doors, and just an indication again of how Moncton is doing and how they're doing in New Brunswick. They're the fourth largest company in Canada. And they're now the IKEA drop-off point in Moncton. And, we're very fortunate to have 3 of the largest trucking companies right here in Moncton across Canada. So we can compete in North America from that standpoint, from a freight standpoint, but we're a little disadvantaged when it comes to labor. It's been very well documented that labor has been a huge issue for us here. Trying to find drivers, dispatchers, warehouse workers, and it's probably gotten worse during COVID. Like I said, the industry has been extremely busy. If you're hauling food, industrial products, anything that goes into construction, I'd say some of my members can't keep up. And but if you look at some industries like the auto industry, the guys that haul auto or cars, they were probably operating at 20% in March and April and May because dealerships were closed, rental cars were not being rented, and some of the manufacturing of autos were closed as well. So they were hurting for a while, but I would say that they're probably back up to their normal operations right now. And like I said, the investment of equipment is really some suppliers can't forecast because nobody's investing in new equipment. They just don't know what's going to happen with COVID. They're busy now, and it's driving up the rates because capacity is really tight. So it's good for trucking without a doubt. The other thing is that during COVID, the government has really stepped up to enable us to continue to operate without issues. And that's really, helped us in a way to establish a relationship at a higher level with government, federally and provincially. A lot of the regulations were put aside during COVID to make sure that the drivers were safe and that everybody had food on their table and things like that. So they had to make concessions, and hopefully it's going to open doors to change regulations longer term going forward, because it's been a real challenge for the industry to get quick decisions when it comes to that. When it comes to the environment, one big thing is like regulations of weights and dimensions. The infrastructure is changing, but regulations are slower to change, and it's not enabling us to buy new technology and use that new technology efficiently because the regulations stipulate something. So, I mean, you might have seen those long combination vehicles on the roads, those two 53-foot trailers. Well, there's more and more on the roads because that's the future for us. It's very efficient. You're eliminating a truck off the road, and you only need one driver for two loads. Therefore, and obviously it's better for the environment because the fuel that you save from eliminating a truck. But there's a lot of regulations around those, and there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be modified on our highways so we can actually operate those vehicles. So that's a big area for us that we need to work with government on for the next few years, because that's really changing the landscape of transportation, and it's really changing the game. If you look at the warehouse that Day & Ross built in Caledonia, they operate a lot of those LCVs, so they need to know that they can come in and out of that industrial park without issues with their LCVs. And right now it's working, but there's some modifications that need some investments by the province that need to be made to handle those vehicles. And like I said, for us, it's been an extremely busy 6 months. Like I said, for a while, their drivers didn't know if they would have found a restaurant to eat in, a place to shower, a place to sleep. And with the US spiking in COVID cases, there's still a lot of uncertainty there. And you know, some drivers are saying, you know, I don't want to go to the US anymore. I'm just gonna do Canadian runs. And so that's a bit of a challenge for companies to manage that. And they had to invest a lot of money into making sure that drivers were being safe and had all the right equipment inside the truck to stay, you know, sanitizer and things like that. And we all know that at the beginning, it was pretty tough to come by. There's more checkpoints. There's more questions being asked at the border. Where were you at? And things like that. So, you know, can I go home to my family? Do we need to isolate? So there was a lot of uncertainty there. So we gotta, you know, kudos to them to keep doing what they're doing and keep the industry strong and alive. But like I said, labor is more present than ever. Labor shortage. So we need to work with government there as well to, I guess, create more awareness, educate people on the different opportunities that exist in our industry, because there's some great careers there. Yeah, in a nutshell, that's all I had. I mean, like I said, it's been an interesting 9 months, but we are one of the lucky ones that have been staying busy, like real estate. So hopefully that'll be a trend that we can build on for the next 12 months.
That's great. Thanks very much, Jean-Marc, and thanks to all four of our speakers for some great content. It is now time for the Q&A. We have about 10 minutes or so to pose some questions. So please click on the chat button if you'd like to pose a question. Il est maintenant temps pour les questions en réponse. Veuillez cliquer sur le bouton chat si vous souhaitez poser une question. We do have some in the chat already. The first one, I guess, is for you, Bill. And somebody has asked whether you have a sense of in terms of a return to work downtown, if the public or private sector is leading the way in terms of coming back?
I haven't got any data. I just kind of empirically knowing the tenants that are in some of the big office buildings downtown. There's a lot on the private sector side that have not yet come back. And I don't really have a sense on the government side. So I don't have anything kind of numerically, but empirically, I know it is the private sector there's a lot that have not yet come back. Mm-hmm. I would hope on the government side that we could probably bend a little bit to kind of help facilitate the process.
Yeah, I know the city of Moncton, I believe, has brought back 98 or 99% of their employees because they wanted to show some leadership. So perhaps we could lean on the provincial and federal governments to do the same. Next question, I think probably is best posed to maybe Jean-Marc as a board member of MID and Bill. And it asks, it says there's a real need for industrial buildings. And we heard about the, explosive growth in the industrial parks. But it says developers, local entrepreneurs want to pre-lease most, if not all, of their future space in order to start building. Without that, they may not be prepared for the risk. What can be done as a region or province to help these developers mitigate risk and get comfortable to move forward?
You
Want to go ahead, Bill, or?
I can probably
Build it, they will come. Yeah, for me, I've been on MID for the last 3 years, and to be honest, every year we keep breaking records for the last 3 years. So there's outside investors that are coming here. I mean, I know we'd like to keep things local, and no one likes to take that risk. And I gave the perfect example that trucking companies are flat out, but no one wants to take the risk of investing in new equipment or new facilities because there's too much uncertainty, especially during this time of COVID. I mean, I can see why someone wouldn't want to take the risk of building a 40,000 square feet warehouse. But like I said, IKEA has a drop-off point now in Moncton, and to be honest, some of the trucking firms had to shift gears a bit here to adapt to the new realities of local deliveries. They're not just focused on long haul now. They're actually creating brand new departments and creating new jobs into what they call the white glove division, if you want. And they're doing local deliveries to your homes. And one good example is there's a local carrier that had a test run last summer, and instead of doing 4,000 deliveries as they forecast, they did 46,000. So they actually expanded that division and built on that. So for someone that doesn't understand that things are shifting like that, I can tell you one thing: there's a few of our members that have met with the Big A, and they're looking for warehousing right now, in the Moncton area, because again, they're growing around here like anywhere else. So it's there's going to be some great opportunities there. I know, Bill, if you can drill more down into details.
Yeah, I can probably offer a couple of comments. I kind of harken back to when we were developing 5.5 and the number of people that came up to me and said, love the building, love the condos. When you build it, I'm going to buy one. Well, it just doesn't work like that, as we know. So I think practically when it comes to doing expansion in the industrial space, there's no capital that needs to come from government, because I think the front end, the demand is there. What I would love to see is a program that allows the protection of the banks on the downside. So basically offer some coverage that if the lease space drops below 50% and the tenant leasing can't keep up with the payments, with the capital payments, then I don't know if it's BDC or who it could be to offer a program to help protect the banks, because that's where you get kind of jammed up a little bit. Is the developer doesn't want to do it, even though their instincts are that it's going to be profitable because they need 90% of it leased up. So if you can offer some comfort on the downsides, I don't think it would actually cost any capital to either the bank or to the government, but it would give that level of comfort that if you guaranteed anything below 50% would be covered as kind of like an insurance policy, then I think that's likely a practical program that the government could put in place to help facilitate the kind of growth in industrial. And as JM said, it's there, and these big players are knocking at our door, and if we don't go get them now, they will land in Burnside most likely. And that's where I'm in conversations all the time, pitting us against Burnside in the greater Halifax area.
Right, good point, Bill. The next question is for Alicia. Someone is asking why government agencies such as ACOA do not seem to recognize the great growth potential of the fintech sector.
I think that the problem with everybody, not only with the government agencies, is we'll call it tradition of our region to call everything software or ICT. Fintech is a specific sector within the smart enterprise technologies or software industry. And it has a life of its own because it has specific needs and growth potential and business models and regulation. It's affected differently from other software solutions, and also have a common target, like go after the same type of prospects. So recognizing the sector is a development that happened in other places in the world. I think that here it started as well in the last year and a half or 2 years, but it's like an evolvement that needs to happen, because we have been calling everything software or ICT for too long. And now we need to really start recognizing that there are sectors that have specific needs and specific, they require specific support to really fulfill their potential. And one of them is fintech, first because we have enough companies in that field. We are not inventing it. We are not trying to create something from nothing. The companies are there, they are successful, they are growing. And the other part is that once you recognize it, you see also a multiplier, because companies as the sector get more visibility and run faster as a collective. So I hope that that's process that is already happening. I hope to hear better news coming our way in the coming time. But I don't think it's something that is not there. It's just a process. Transitioning from the general description of ICT to the more specialized description of the sectors and their needs and their recognition.
Great. Thanks very much, Alicia. The next question is for Bernard. We're wondering what you're hearing in terms of corporate business travel and the comfort of businesses to put their people back on planes.
Sure. Thanks, Sean. I guess some of the business travel nowadays it may be hard to define, because if I look at who's traveling right now, it's mobile workers. So they're traveling for business, and they're traveling for essential work and because they have jobs somewhere else. So I know we had a presentation or a survey done with the Canadian Airport Council. And I think whether it be business travel or leisure, friends and family type travel, they're both challenged the same way. As till people feel a bit safer with a vaccine, the measures being taken place, those type of things, there won't be a huge spike. So there's still some people that are, I will travel tomorrow or I will never travel. So I don't think right now, and I think the numbers I saw were maybe there was a 38% appetite to travel right now, but I think that could mean different things. If I look at business travel in New Brunswick, it could involve the US quite a bit. There may not be as much of an appetite for the US as there is the rest of Canada. If I look at travel restrictions, Atlantic Canada is very restrictive. It's essential travel only. But if you look at Western Canada, anyone can travel. It doesn't have to be essential travel. So I think one thing we do see right now is travel activity in Western Canada is maybe twice as high as in Atlantic Canada. So because there's less restrictions. So is that business, is that leisure? I don't have that breakdown, but I think you'll need to have a few things take place before you get more comfort level in business. So first of all, we're allowed to travel in Canada. People are comfortable with the measures taking place. When you get a vaccine in place, then all of a sudden maybe people aren't reluctant whatsoever. So I think it's all those steps. And maybe just as we were talking, I just got an email that our travel in August went up 25% from July. So we are starting to see a bit of improvement. But again, if the capacity isn't there because the airlines don't see anyone that can travel, then you can't keep growing that. So.
Thanks very much, Bernard. We haven't managed to get to all the questions, but I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. And on behalf of the Chamber, thanks everybody for attending. And to bring some closing remarks to our session, I'll turn it over to Susie Campos at 3+.
First of all, I want to thank all of our speakers, Bernard, Bill, Jean-Marc, and Alicia. Thank you so much for joining us. Everything that you just spoke about today, it just brings to light the interconnectedness of our economy when we speak about airports and how it affects the hospitality industry and people returning to work, and how it affects the restaurants and the commercial space. Just to give you a little bit of numbers behind FinTech, Greater Moncton is home to 177 firms in the finance and insurance sector. And for transportation, Greater Moncton is home to 185 transportation and warehousing firms. So that tells you the magnitude of those two sectors. And of course, COVID has brought into light the supply chain. And so warehousing, transportation being a key component. I hope that members of the business community and the election candidates that are online found this worthwhile. Just a reminder, go out and vote on September 14th. Thanks everyone for joining us. Merci beaucoup.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep, thanks everyone.